So if you saw the recent US election, you might be amongst the many people currently looking for a minority group of some choice to blame. It's the Muslims' fault it was. Or what about the Latino voters who voted more for Trump this time? How about the immigrants? They can't vote, but sure, I'm guessing they had something to do with it. Or the Hamburglar. He's been acting awful quiet since the election took place. But one of the more surprising callouts was Gen Z men.
As President-elect Donald Trump prepares to enter the White House, he has a new base behind him, Gen Z. Social media was flooded with videos of young people celebrating Trump's win, more signs that the Democratic Party lost some of the youngest voters who normally back them.
Young, first-time voters and their online daddies like Andrew Tate or Fresh and Fit or Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan. Surely, they must have been the cause of all this. First off, we should establish that in a democracy, it's up to a political party to offer a platform that inspires voters, not only to vote for them, but ideally to help work for them to get elected through canvassing and donations. It would appear that nearly 10 million less Democrats voted this time for Kamala Harris than they did for Joe Biden. A lot of factors contributed to this, including conditions that were put forth by COVID and the economic realities of high inflation. While being a nuanced issue difficult to convey in a soundbite, being a material reality for a lot of voters, the cost of living was just increasing and no one can afford a home. Meanwhile, Harris-Walz did come close to winning several key swing states. However, their insistence on providing no limits to Israel's genocide of Palestinians, while continuing to promise the same policies of her predecessor.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Led to large amounts of Muslim and Arab voters voting for third parties or simply not participating, and younger voters not buying the sales pitch at all. In fact, youth vote dropped significantly from 2020 at around 50% to just below 40% in 2024, meaning that a large portion simply didn't participate in the election at all. Amongst younger voters, 41% of women voted for Harris compared to 55% of men, and amongst those that did said that they did so because the priority was for jobs, the economy, and immigration. Similar patterns found amongst men who selected Trump in every single age demographic. Keep in mind that this information comes from exit polling and not from raw statistics on how every American voted. It doesn't always paint a complete picture. While Muslim Americans in swing states, for example, voted less for Harris, overall in the exit polling, it showed that Muslim voters overall did choose Harris and Walz. In fact, most non-white or non-Christian groups did. Strangely, the issue never seems to be that the majority of white men and white women voted for Trump. In fact, the Harris-Walz campaign went out of their way to appeal to right-wing and Republican voters by campaigning with Liz Cheney more than they did with any single trans activist or Palestinian American.
If what you want is a centrist campaign that's quiet on trans issues, tough on the border, distances itself from Palestinians, talks a lot about law and order and reaches out to moderate Republicans, that candidate existed and she just lost.
Despite the praise of a war criminal like Dick Cheney, the Harris campaign received less Republican voters than Biden got in 2020, and a study in Pennsylvania showed that 3 in 10 independents were turned off by Liz Cheney campaigning in their level of enthusiasm. So then, why are Gen Z men getting blamed for the election, when the reality is that less young people voted and less people voted Democratic overall in raw numbers? Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that the media and pundits often rush to want a single solution that they can point towards when judging any significant loss that happened for the Democrats. They lost the presidency, they lost the Senate, and they lost the House, all 3 branches of government. So liberal pundits and politicians rush to blame things like wokeness and trans people, saying that the average American is sick of identity politics.
The progressive era should be over if they want to start winning again.
Did Kamala Harris move too far to the center and alienate some of the base?
It was Joe Rogan, it was Elon Musk getting out those young male voters.
They didn't have a message that attracted working class voters.
She failed to capture enough support among white voters, men, and first-time voters.
Which isn't fair at all, considering that Kamala Harris and her campaign largely avoided any kind of identity politics. They avoided campaigning on a platform of "I'm with her" and didn't let a single trans person speak at the DNC. If anything, it was the Republicans who were obsessed with identity politics.
America is for Americans and Americans only. It's the first Samoan, Malaysian, low IQ, former California prosecutor. She is the devil, whoever screamed that out.
In Springfield, They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets.
With talking points like childless cat ladies and Trump boasting about penis size in his speeches while deep-throating a microphone. This is an unavoidable reality of the double standard present when a multiracial black woman like Kamala Harris had to endure a never-ending barrage of sexist and racist tropes levied at her. While Trump could get away with saying virtually anything he wanted, and independent voters were willing to look past his disgusting statements to vote for the perception that he may have been better economically. Globally, in Western democracies, there is a trend for incumbents to be rejected, pointing towards consistent frustration at the inability to afford housing, the increase in the cost of consumer goods, and the frustration with the endless wealth concentration being accelerated under neoliberal capitalism, an economic system that both Republicans and Democrats support, one which can be slowed with more taxation on corporations, something that Donald Trump has reversed. But again, not a fine detail when people are having trouble paying bills and they fixate on it. Multiple studies that observe political trends of Gen Z show that despite the media outrage that young men are an entire generation of Andrew Tates or Jordan Petersons in waiting, they're actually still closely aligned with progressive values to that of millennial men. They're the most ethnically diverse generation in history, and proximity to other ethnicities and cultures tends to foster acceptance of diversity. They're the most LGBTQ+ identifying generation in history as well, and that shows high levels of acceptance of LGBTQ+ people. While millennials are the first generation to buck the trend of becoming more conservative as they age, Gen Z shows a majority are concerned about issues like climate change, universal human rights, Black Lives Matter, and a lowered amount of support for Christian nationalism. Even Gen Z men, the problem children, are not majority right-wing or conservative, despite being more conservative than Gen Z women. Gen Z women, on the other hand, are very left-leaning, creating a gap that, when you look at it at first, appears as if it's veering in two opposite directions. But that doesn't confirm that men are uniquely becoming more far-right as a result. While Gen Z men are choosing to identify less as Democrats, the majority are not identifying as conservatives. And while they have concerns centered around economic anxiety, they still overall score more left-leaning than every other generation besides millennials. This isn't to discount a very serious problem that has less to do with Gen Z men and more to do with large tech corporations. Right-wing media dominates most social media platforms. Most manosphere content overlaps with white supremacist content and other far-right content producers. As long as big tech prioritizes promoting content that angers its users and keeps people scrolling while not seriously curbing the growth of racist and misogynistic content producers, there will continue to be a very lucrative world for right-wing media online. But Andrew Tate didn't create misogyny or wealth inequality. He simply profits from exploiting it and turning young men looking for community or how to meet women into men who become more angry at women and community overall. The messaging should be that there are people who are controlling a lot of society and making our lives worse, but they aren't a cabal of elites in the way that Alex Jones or Jordan Peterson presents it. They happen to be billionaires, large corporations, investment firms, basically those with all the capital and money. There isn't a single solution to a multifaceted problem. Everyone would like to simply say that if a single racist or sexist content creator got banned, that it would reduce men from becoming into monsters. Everyone would like to point to a single voting group as the reason Kamala lost the election, but there's a multitude of reasons. The hardest truth of all is one that liberal pundits and Democratic insiders won't swallow. That neoliberal capitalism since the days of Reagan and Thatcher have been concentrating wealth into the hands of fewer and fewer people, and companies with their enormous power influences democracy while billions of people are fighting for crumbs. People have economic concerns and don't feel listened to, so they try voting for the other team. When that doesn't solve the problem, they try again. If neither side will hold companies accountable or rein in billionaires' unchecked financial growth, then we're all doomed to watch a corporate-produced climate change spiral that destabilizes society until there isn't one left to save.
If you're like me, you probably have trouble getting through the day without a delicious cup of coffee. Unfortunately, so much of what is being sold is either exploitative of workers in the global south or helps enrich corporations that fight their workers unionizing or support war crimes overseas. Which is why I'm proud to drink Solstice Coffee. It's the only end-to-end indigenous-owned coffee company in North America. But if buying ethical products isn't your thing, then you'll be happy to know it's not only incredibly delicious, but with the promo code available at surfscoffee.com, you'll not only receive 10% off your orders, but also receive free shipping. A tiny bit of money helps support the Surf's content, and a lot more goes towards a woman-owned coffee company that's trying to make a difference in an otherwise bleak capitalist hellscape. You already drink coffee, so why not drink coffee that's not only delicious, but ethical? Go to surfscoffee.com or type surfs10 over at solsticecoffee.ca and become the best sloth you were meant to be.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This independent series is made entirely possible thanks to our patrons. It was produced by Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Bohem, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, and Words Greenwood. Not to mention all the other patrons we now see on screen. We couldn't have done this show without you. If you can help support the show, please check out patreon.com/thesurfs to unlock bonus secret episodes as well as get the content before anyone else.